Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Fit2Fat2Fit Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Manning. Now, today is a special episode. First of all, Lynn's not here with me. I'm doing this podcast episode by myself. But the way we set it up is actually a simulcast with Jimmy Moore, who's the host of Live and Lavita Low Carb. He has his own very successful podcast. I was on his show about 4 years ago. In the middle of my Fit2Fat2Fit journey, we reconnected and decided to do a simulcast where I'm interviewing him a little bit. He's interviewing me a little bit. So this is different. This is the first time I've done this. It's an experiment. So let me know what you guys think about it. I'll be honest with you. It's actually a lot easier to do this because it takes all the pressure off of me of having to be the interviewer. It's good to, have it be half and half, or he interviews me a little bit and I interview him. I do talk to him and pick his brain a little bit about ketosis. I talk about my 1 week experiment on ketosis and what I learned from that and what I plan on doing in the future. He challenged me to do a 60-day keto diet, so you'll see what I say to that. And so for those of you who don't know who Jimmy Moore is, he is a very successful blogger and podcaster. He's been around, I think he has over 1,000 episodes now on his podcast, liveandlavitalowcarb.com. He's the author of, I think, 4 books now, Keto Clarity, the Keto Cookbook. Basically, he's the master of anything ketosis, which is becoming very, very popular nowadays. Jimmy actually used to weigh 410 pounds and is a big fan of the keto diet and what it's done for him and his health. And he has a very interesting story. Before we jump into the episode today, this episode is brought to you guys by dollarworkoutclub.com. Now, the new year just started, January 2016. A lot of New Year's resolutions are out there. dollarworkoutclub.com is a great way to get started with your goals for 2016. First of all, what it is in a nutshell is you pay $1 per week and you get access to 5 at-home workout videos that are designed by me, Lynn, or Natalie Hodson, and you get access to 5 healthy recipe videos and 5 motivational videos every single week for just $1. So you get to work out with us from your smartphone, your laptop, your iPad, even your smart TV. You can work out with us. The videos are streamed, and you can do the workout at your own fitness level, beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And like I said, all you pay is just $1 per week. So it's a great, easy way to get started, so you don't have to go to the gym where it's going to be packed and you have to fight for machines. And, it's just hectic this time of the year, whereas Dollar Workout Club makes it easy and affordable to get started with your workout program. So check it out at dollarworkoutclub.com. Now let's go hang out with Jimmy Moore, you guys.
Hey guys, welcome in if you're listening on the Live and Lavita Low Carb Show with Jimmy Moore. And today we have a very special show that it will be simulcast on someone else's podcast. So that's someone else. I'm going to let them introduce themselves right now and introduce to their listeners.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Fit2Fat2Fit Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Drew Manning. Jimmy, thank you so much for setting up this simulcast. I'm so excited to make this happen.
Yeah, man, I thought this would be fun. I've been doing podcasts for a long time, and you were on my show way back when. I was looking it up, December of 2011, way back in episode 519, which is like half of my podcast ago. And so you were the guy who actually made yourself fat. You were a personal trainer, fitness guy, made yourself fat only to show your clients, hey, you can get fit again. And you learned a lot of lessons along the way, got a New York Times bestselling book out of it. And dude, you are soaring now. You've got this brand new podcast that you're doing and a new A&E television show. So dude, you've just taken this and run with it.
Well, what's crazy is I can't believe it was 4 years ago that I was on your podcast. And
5 years ago.
Yeah, I can't remember. I remember being on your podcast and talking about my Fit2Fat2Fit journey. And then fast forward, I had no idea this TV show and a podcast and this would become a brand, right? I had no idea any of this would happen.
Huge brand.
And so I feel blessed. I feel, grateful to have all this happen. But at the same time, I feel lucky. Like I didn't, and it wasn't intentional for me, but I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm grateful to be where I'm at today. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And yeah, I remember you when you were doing this whole Fit2Fat2Fit thing, and you got to go on the Dr. Oz show when you gained all the weight. Definitely go back and listen. We'll have a link to the original interview if you want to listen to how that all went down. But you're on Dr. Oz and Good Morning America, and even Jay Leno had you on The Tonight Show, The View, and so many other places. You really got that story out there. Why do you think that was so intriguing to people? What was it about a personal trainer gaining weight that made it so sexy as a story?
Well, I can only answer from what people have told me. I mean, because I did what I did for myself to gain a better understanding. But I think the reason people were so intrigued by it is because I was doing things in a backwards sort of way. And sometimes it takes something a little crazy to catch people's attention. And what I was doing was downright, crazy. I'll admit that. It was crazy. It was risky.
It was crazy.
And I think that's what got people's attention. But more so, they saw how it changed me. Because if I was doing it to rub it in people's faces and say, look, it's so easy, I can do this. I think people saw how humbled I was, how truly humbled I was. If you look at my vlogs on YouTube to see my weekly posts about how this was such a surprising experience for me, they saw that I was humbled. They saw that I was changed and that I gained a better respect, a better understanding of kind of what it was like to be overweight. I never came across and said, look, I know exactly now what overweight people go through, because I don't pretend to know exactly what it's like, because each person's journey is different. But at least I could say, look, I have a better understanding. I definitely have more empathy. And I totally understand the mental and emotional side way more than I did before I did this journey. And so I think that's what people have told me. A lot of people have kind of told me for them, it was like being in a race and they were kind of towards the back, it's struggling on this journey. And here I was, this person at the front of the race who's super fit and healthy. And I kind of took a step back and went to the back of the race with them and took them on the journey alongside with them as I lost the weight. And so that's what people have told me and demonstrated to me of how this helped them connect in a different way, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And Drew, I remember on our last interview, I asked you about some of the cravings when you started trying to come off of the sugar, because you gained a pretty substantial amount of weight in a very short amount of time. You actually lost your abs pretty quick and got the moobs and all that stuff. So, and I remember asking you during our interview the last time that it probably took you a while to get over the cravings. Now that it's been years later, do you still deal with some of those issues that you had trying to come off of that sugar? Do you still feel some of that even today?
I do. And you know what? This is the perfect time to talk about it during the holidays. When these kinds of processed carbs are in my house, I honestly feel like I have no control. So, for example, right now during the holiday season, a lot of treats, were brought to me, or we made some treats, or for my birthday just recently, people brought over cupcakes, donuts, things like that. And they're in my house.
Don't they know better?
They do know better, but at the same time, people show their love by giving you food sometimes. And so, anyways,
so sick of food being love. But yeah, that's another topic.
It is another topic. But anyway, so I have this food in my house, and there are times where I try to willpower my way through not eating them, and I have honestly struggled, and I've given in. So I've learned that I still have those cravings today. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, I still have those cravings that I struggle with. The key for me, and what I tell most people, seems to work. If the food's not in the house, I'm not going to go out of my way to the donut shop, or I'm not going to go out of my way to the cupcake store to buy these foods. Right. But when they're in my house, sitting there, and I know that they're there, I'm going to have a moment of weakness every now and then where if it's that convenient, I'm going to eat it. And so I still do struggle. Yes, they are.
Ooh. You want me.
Oh, man. I tell you, it's really, really hard. And so, that's one thing I still continue to struggle with. I tell people cravings never really go away for me, but they become easier to manage over time if you know your weaknesses and you prepare for those temptations, if that makes sense.
Well, and know that you have ways of squelching those cravings when they come on. I think one of the things that our society has done with all the low-fat dogma over the past few decades is they've eschewed fat as this really enemy in your health, and yet that's the very thing that could be helping a lot of people, stave off a lot of those cravings and addictions to sugary types of things that they think they can't live without. But if you ate fat, you wouldn't have those desires.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you, actually, is do you still run into people that are concerned about eating fat, even today, even though you've had your podcast on for years?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I would say even more now than ever before. Now, yes, the education's getting out there. And in the science realm, Drew, this has been known that was so bogus many years ago, when you were on my show the last time, the science had already begun to churn about saturated fat, and yet it hasn't penetrated into the culture. I think we're still another decade, maybe decade and a half before it really, truly catches on in the whole low-fat dogma that we've lived at our entire lives, you and me, the whole time we've been alive. Low-fat has been the dogma.
Yeah. Yep, that's so true. And I wonder if it's more prevalent in the older generation versus, the younger generation. Because I feel like more people are educated now that listen to podcasts and come from a younger generation that use technology. They have learned more about ketosis and high-fat diets and not being afraid of eating fat. But whereas I feel like my parents' generation, even though me and you will tell them, look, eat some fat, right, I still feel like they're scared.
Well, they're scared of the fat, and then they trust their doctors inherently. My wife was just telling me about her father went in to the doctor, and his cholesterol was high, and okay, here's your prescription for a statin drug. And he didn't even bat an eye about it. And he knows I wrote a whole book about cholesterol and why it's not the enemy in your health, and it's the inflammation, stupid, and it doesn't matter because he's of that generation that's what they believe, and they believe everything that they've learned. Unfortunately, if they just went back to the way their moms and dads ate, we'd all be healthy again.
Yeah, that's so true. So do you interact with doctors and that kind of are from that era and talk about that science? Do you have, how do you talk to doctors versus, followers or fans that are listening?
You mean doctors that aren't already on board with this message?
Yes.
Yeah, because most of the people that I talk to are ones, they get this message already. And the few that don't, they are of the mindset that I have the answers to your medical history and your medical health. You are not trained in medicine. I actually had a vegan doctor on one time who pretty much railed against me that I wasn't qualified to talk about this stuff because I didn't have a medical degree, and he did have a medical degree. You may know him, Dr. John McDougall, but definitely go look that one up. It was a hilarious episode, but and pretty much berated me for not having that medicine in my education. And I'm going, well, I have a brain. I have the ability to research. I have the ability to look up and find information. I don't need a degree to have all of that at my disposal. And so I think this information age has really changed the game. Now, I'm not saying that I have the equivalency of an MD, but I certainly have a lot of PhD type of knowledge with all the people that I've talked to over the years and gleaned experience from. It's really an uphill battle for that over 60 crowd in the medical profession.
Yeah. And for me, I think experience is so valuable and it's overlooked in our society. People will discredit you because you don't have a PhD. Be like, well, Jimmy Moore, that's cool and all, but he doesn't have, a PhD, so I can't listen to him. And fortunately, I feel like experience is very valuable in our society, but it is overlooked, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about ketosis, because I mentioned to you I did a 1 week experiment.
1 whole week. Wow.
Yeah, 1 whole week. Well, it was just kind of like on the fly. I'm like, you know what? I've been learning a lot about it. And it's become a lot more prevalent. I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss and his podcast, and I learned about, he's awesome. And I, seeing him do it and the benefits that he had, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try this. I just, wanted to wing it. So here I was. I went to my CVS, got some keto sticks, the ones you pee on. And I just went high fat, and I lowered my protein actually because I was actually listening to your podcast. I can't remember with who it was, but I remember you saying if you eat too much protein, it can knock you out of ketosis. And so I lowered my protein and my fat, and it was a very interesting experiment. For 1 whole week I did it, and within 2 days I was in ketosis. Based off of the keto sticks, which I'm not sure how accurate they are.
So I would say within 2 days you were spilling ketones into your urine, but probably not keto adapted. That keto adaptation period is probably a good 2, maybe 3 weeks for people to get fully into a ketogenic state where you actually should be measuring your blood ketones. Did you ever read my book, Keto Clarity?
I have not yet. I've heard so much about it, but I just haven't got my hands on it yet.
Tim Ferriss actually highly recommended it to his followers that wanted to learn about ketosis, but it'll show you that the one you were measuring in the urine is called acetoacetate, which is cool. When you first start, it kind of shows you what ketones you're spilling over into your urine, but what you really want to see is the beta hydroxybutyrate, BHB. That's the one that's in the blood. And you can measure that with a Precision Extra monitor. You have to buy it online. I did a Periscope video about how you can find the strips pretty cheap because they can be real expensive. If you go on Amazon right now, they're like $4 or $5 per strip.
Oh,
But
wow.
I got some from Australia for about $1 a strip. So, and then test your blood ketones. And that, I'm telling you, man, that is not going to lie about where you stand in your ketones. And definitely, if you do decide to do it again, and I know you have a propensity for doing N=1 experiments like I do it for longer than a week. I would say do it for 60 days to truly get the full moxie of what it's all about.
Yeah, and I do want to do a lot more research and a lot more homework on it because I've learned about synthetic ketones, which I actually wanted to ask you about as well. How necessary are those? What are the benefits? What are the downsides to these synthetic ketones, which in my opinion, aren't as widely available yet as I think people know, but you can find them and they're expensive, $5 to $6 a serving. Sometimes.
Are you talking about the exogenous ketones like Keto OS and some of these other kind of products?
Yes.
Yeah. So I am a fan of them in as much as I think some people need to be put into a state of ketosis for neurodegenerative disease. For cancer, if someone's trying to deal with cancer with a ketogenic diet, like Tim Ferriss has, Lyme disease, this may boost their ketones. People with epilepsy, some of those more severe cases of health decline, I think those exogenous ketone products can be amazing for those people. And for the everyday person that is trying to do it nutritionally to get into ketosis, but they're not quite getting there, this could be that added psychological boost that could get them into ketosis. But my experience with them, and I do use them personally, is it's very fleeting, especially if you already are in ketosis and you're experiencing, moderately high amounts of ketones over 1.0 on the blood ketone monitor. You're not going to see a huge boost from 1.0. It'll go 1.0 to 1.3. Which is okay, but then it's in and out of your system within about 2 to 3 hours. So athletes that are trying to be fat adapted, perhaps before their race, they take some of this exogenous ketone product. It can be helpful for them. So I think in the right circumstance, those artificial ketones, as you call them, can be good. But I think as the baseline for most everyone, do it nutritionally.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one thing I tend to lean towards anyways, is do it nutritionally first and foremost. But I feel like, from what I've seen, and I'm not sure if this is your experience, do people do it to go through ketosis in a, I don't want to say lazier way, but like, hey, I can get away with eating more carbs. All I do is just take these exogenous ketones.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Back into ketosis.
I'm not a fan of that mentality. I think that is a recipe for disaster. Anybody that knows me and my work, I'm all about do it low carb, moderate protein, high fat first. And if you're struggling to get enough ketones for whatever the reason you're doing ketosis, then add this in as an adjunct to, not in lieu of.
Gotcha. That's smart, and I'm board with you as far as that goes as well. So
and do it with real food.
Exactly. And so, what are some of the what are most of the complaints? Not complaints. The hardest thing that you get from people that ask about, well, how do I stay in ketosis? What are the foods that I eat? Those types of, I don't want to say complaints, but that's the word that's coming to my mind for some reason, about the types of foods you're supposed to eat. Because people think, well, does that just mean I eat coconut oil and meat all day?
Yeah, and when you start saying moderating protein and lowering carbs, are like, well, what else am I supposed to eat? And I thought most protein was bound up with fat and fat with protein. And so how do you eat, that much fat? You just add fat. You can add avocado is pretty much all monounsaturated fat, a beautiful monounsaturated fat, by the way. You can cook in coconut oil for sure. You can cook in grass-fed butter, which I love doing. I'll throw some sour cream or cream cheese on top of some eggs, have some bacon, and an avocado, and that's a beautiful ketogenic meal. You can throw in a few green leafy vegetables into your omelet or whatever, and make it palatable. I think one of the conceptions is it's just a boring diet, that all you eat is just kind of this basic food categories, and that's it. Now, I wrote a whole book about this in 2015 called the Ketogenic Cookbook. I need to get you one of those, as well as Keto Clarity. So let's talk after the air to get you those. But there's so many ways to make it work. And I think it's just excuses if people say, well, it's just not palatable. It just doesn't seem like it's a very good way to eat. I'm telling you, man, you will lose all of your cravings for all of those things. When you said a while ago that you're still dealing with some of the cravings and you get these cupcakes, I got rid of that a long time ago, and I'll tell you how.
Okay.
I look at cupcakes and cookies and all this crappy garbage, as I call it, as rat poison. And so if you mentally put that negative image into your brain that those things are rat poison, guess what? Yes, on a conscious level, it's not rat poison, but it gives you just enough pause to go, nope, I'm going to make better choices. Now, for somebody like you that's relatively fit, yeah, you got fat and you got fit again, but you still can probably handle carbs better than somebody like me who used to weigh 410 pounds and was on 3 prescription medications and was a mess early in my life, that now in my mid-40s, I'm having to fight it just to stay as healthy as I am today. And so I think it depends on who it is that's dealing with that, which is why ketosis can help a lot of people, regardless of where you are on this journey.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I'll put the links in the show notes to those 2 books as well to my followers, because I want them to access that information as well. But getting back to that, yeah, I totally agree with you. So do you so let me ask you this: do you never have the, what do you call the
crappy garbage?
Crappy garbage. I was trying to remember that. Crappy garbage. You never have a treat meal, if you will.
Back in 2004, when I went through my journey where I lost 180 pounds in that one year, I did have what I called planned splurges. And what was interesting, Drew, was I did that thinking I want that. And the first 2 times I did want it. I had pizza one time and I had, I forget what I had the other time. But after like 2 or 3 times of doing that, I went, ugh. It was gross because I had become so used to enjoying what I got to eat on the low carb lifestyle that I was like, well, this is silly going back to eating something that I know is going to make me feel horrible. And it did. Every time I ate those things, I'd be on the bathroom floor for, writhing in pain. And I'm going, why am I doing this again? I've changed my life. I don't need those things anymore. So no, I do not.
Yeah, it's funny how as humans, we tend to do that to ourselves a lot. Not just with food, but we know this is going to make ourselves feel bad, but we do it anyways. It could be with alcohol or anything else. But
something about that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah, how's that working for you?
Exactly. So is your wife, does she do the keto as well, or what does she do?
She's interesting because when we got married, she was like 95 pounds soaking wet, and I was 300 pounds at the time. And it was funny because she had always been stick thin, and we got married, and I lost the weight on the low carb and everything, and she was still eating Skittles and M&Ms and drinking Dr. Pepper, and she went to get her triglycerides measured. And Drew, she found out her triglycerides were somewhere around 300. And anybody that knows the metabolism of triglycerides, that's from a high carb intake. And so I like, honey, you know what you got to do. So we cut her carbs. That's literally all we did was cut out the Skittles, M&Ms, and Dr. Pepper. That was pretty much all we did. And in 6 weeks, it went from 300 to 130. And she did go full on keto when she got pregnant with our twins about 3 or 4 years ago, pregnant with twins. We did end up losing those twins, but she kept the diet and continued to do it. And now her triglycerides and HDL and ketone levels are better than mine.
Wow.
Ticks me off.
Yeah. And I'm sorry to hear that. I actually did not know that part of your story. I did not know you lost the twins, so I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Heart goes out to you guys. So do you guys not have any kids?
Yeah, we can't have kids. We tried the IVF, and that didn't work. And then we tried the embryo adoption, and that's where she got pregnant with the twins, and she lost them a month later.
Gotcha. So what do you do for people that have kids that ask for your advice on, okay, well, I have kids, they have treats every now and then, or do I make them eat a keto diet? What about for kids? Is keto safe for kids?
Yeah, certainly it's a real food. As long as you're sticking to real food, I don't think kids necessarily need keto per se. What they don't need is this daily barrage of crappy garbage into their diet. So if you're going to give them a treat on occasion, that's fine. I mean, I think if a kid has some candy once a week and you make that kind of a big deal. That's the way it used to be, Drew.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they'd have, I remember my grandpa talking about or somebody that was an older person in my life talked about, well, yeah, back when I was a kid, we were lucky if we had 1 6-ounce Coca-Cola at the end of the week on Sunday night. That was kind of what we got as our treat once a week. And now the kids are guzzling, big 2 liters every single day.
That's funny. I was just talking to my older brother about that. That's how it was for him, for us growing up in a family of 11 kids. We didn't have extra money for, desserts or treats like that. And so when we did get something, it was a big deal for us. Yeah. And now that my parents are older and, the kids are moved out of the house, it's treats almost every day, So it's funny how that's changed over time, just because it's more accessible and it's so convenient and affordable nowadays that it's like an everyday occurrence. So,
and even to the moms and dads who think, oh, I'll just feed my kids lots and lots of fruit. That's much healthier for them. I don't think fruit every day should be something for kids. Fruit on occasion, kind of like a candy bar, treat it like a candy bar. Yes, there's micronutrients. Yes, there's fiber if you eat the whole fruit, but it's not a freebie. If you're going to feed your kids something every day, feed them vegetables every day, feed them fat and protein every day, but they really don't need that sugar rush, whether it's from natural sources or Coca-Cola ding-dongs and ho-hos.
Yeah, so true, so true. Yeah, no, our kids eat pretty much what we eat. That they eat the same foods that we eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't make them mac and cheese and chicken McNuggets while we're eating our keto-friendly dinner, that we make them eat the same foods that we eat. And for the most part, if that's the case, I understand when they go to school, their friend's going to give them some candy, or they go over to, their friend's house, they're going to have those situations where they're going to be exposed to other food. And I'm sure they're going to choose some type of candy over broccoli any day, right? They're kids. Yeah. But if I can control the majority of their food when they're with me, then I feel like at least they have a good base of nutrition of what's healthy and what's not.
Well, and it's all in the messaging of it too. I remember having somebody on my podcast before who said, when you talk to kids about things like broccoli, say, this is muscle building broccoli and you'll become a superhero if you eat this broccoli, and tout it in that kind of language. I love that. I mean, I don't have kids of my own, but I could see that working.
No, it's true, and I've done that before. And I explain why we eat these vegetables, why it's important that we eat them, instead of just say, "Hey, eat your vegetables because Dad said." That doesn't seem to work too well. No. And plus, I always try and get my kids to be a part of the food making process. We go to the grocery store, we grocery shop together, we cook together. They help me prep the food, and then we eat together and we talk about why we're eating these foods instead of just eat them because Dad said. So I feel like that's helped my kids over time to eat the foods that I make them, and I try and put extra effort into preparing their meals in a nice way where I'll make them into shape sometimes, or I'll make it colorful, or I'll make it fun where I'll spell something out with the vegetables. I know that a lot of parents don't have the energy or time to do that sometimes, and I don't all the time, but I've realized that seems to help my kids be more entertained with the food and like, oh, this is exciting. Because if I just give them a piece of raw broccoli, for example, it's not as exciting as if I like cut it up and make a letter with it or something like that. I know it's extra effort, but for me, it works.
Put it into the form of a stormtrooper, and you got a Star Wars fan and a broccoli fan.
It's so true, man. Just getting creative with your food can make a big difference in helping your kids eat more veggies, which is our goal here.
Come to the green side.
Oh man, I tell you, that's with Star Wars just coming out, that's great.
There you go. So tell me about this A&E show. How did you get that gig? How did that all come about?
Gosh. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit of the backstory, because when Fit2Fat2Fit blew up back in, you had me on in December, it blew up around October, which is when I went on the Jay Leno show.
2011, yeah.
Yeah, 2011. So many people were exposed to what I was doing, and it was like overnight, all these TV shows started calling. Well, a production company out of LA reached out to me about 4 years ago around that time saying, hey, we saw your journey. We think you're awesome. We think you're a little crazy, but awesome still. And we'd love to pitch a TV show idea to you for you to be a part of, and we'll go pitch it to different networks.
Crazy is good television.
Yes, trust me. Reality TV, it's changed our culture, which I don't know if for the better or not. But anyways, okay, so they reach out to me and they pitched me the idea for a TV show. And back then, the show was set up as a competition type of show, similar to Biggest Loser, where trainers have to gain all this weight, And then they have to compete against these other teams of overweight trainers now and overweight clients trying to lose the weight together. And it was on this camp and all this stuff. Anyways, we pitched it to every single network you can think of, and nobody picked it up. It was dead in the water. And I'm like, oh man, oh well,
what was the objections? What were the major objections? That's too risky. Only Drew could have got away with that. What were they saying?
I think it was the risk factor. Like we're putting all the people's lives at risk here, and we're not sure if we want that kind of attention. And I just don't think anybody at that time was ready for it, even though I got a lot of praise for what I was doing. But to put it into that type of format didn't seem to work with all these big networks. Anyways, fast forward about 3.5 years later, about a year ago, basically, they reached back out to me saying, look, we really feel like we missed the boat with the TV show idea. We want to go repitch it again because there's new executives at these networks, and we've done this before in the past where we repitch it and someone picks it up. I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And then 2 weeks later, they call me up and say, congratulations, A&E just bought the rights to the show. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so this is how it works. Like, I had no idea how the TV industry works. But anyways, they changed the format of the show to make it more of a docu-series. And the executive producer of the show, who's a good friend of mine now, Dan Partland, was the executive producer of a TV show called Intervention. Okay. So basically, it's a show where people with certain addictions, they come in and intervene and help them out. And it was a great show. So anyways, he's the executive producer of Fit2Fat2Fit on A&E. And so it's more of a docu-series. So one trainer for 4 months has to let go of their old lifestyle. They have to gain the weight for 4 months. And then after those 4 months, they're teamed up with a client that's obese. And together as a team, they have to lose the weight together. Oh, wow. And my role on the show is behind the scenes producer, kind of sharing what I learned from my journey. Because my whole goal was not to turn this into a Kardashian reality TV show, right, but to stay true to the lessons that I learned, gaining some empathy, understanding more of the mental and emotional side. I feel like I was able to help kind of mold it in that way so that it didn't just become some Kardashian type of reality TV show. And so anyways, in a nutshell, that's basically the concept. There's 10 trainers on the show, all from across the United States, and they all are teamed up.
Gain weight?
All willing to gain weight. I know it's crazy.
Did they have a minimum weight that they had to gain, a percentage of their weight that they had to gain to be qualified? How did that work?
They had to agree to try and gain a certain percentage, but I'll be honest with you, not to give out any spoilers, some of them struggled to gain the weight.
I can tell them how to gain weight, Drew.
I was trying to tell them. I'm like, look, this is how you gain the weight. But a lot of it, you'll be surprised. The mental and emotional stress of this all for some of these trainers was too much, and we actually had to pull the plug a little bit early because some of them were struggling so much from a mental and emotional going up. We're struggling so much. And so my whole goal was to get these trainers to gain some empathy, but we couldn't force it on them, right? We can't force you to gain empathy. But my whole goal was for them to at least have a better respect for people who were overweight, to understand that it's way harder than they think.
I mean, you knew what that was like. You went through that yourself, and I'm sure in the midst of you eating all that processed carbohydrates, I remember that's what you told me on my show, was that's what you had to do, just stuff your mouth with basically over-consuming mostly, crappy garbage. And that's how you gain the weight. And I remember you saying how hard that was, that you didn't realize that it was going to be that hard to do. So you already knew about all the mental obstacles that you're now seeing these other trainers deal with.
Yeah, and I warned them about it too. I'm like, look, you guys, this is way harder than I thought. Than I thought it was going to be. And it does affect you so much more than a physical level. Yes, you will gain weight. Yes, you will get, a big gut and love handles. But it's so much more than that. It's so much more of a mental and emotional journey that I was not prepared for. And I'm telling you guys, it's going to change you if you really put the effort into this. And every single one of them admitted, this was way harder than I thought. And they come out with a better appreciation of themselves and a better appreciation of their clients. And I think a lot of people will see how they change on a mental and emotional level versus physical. Obviously, physical, we know what's going to happen, right? They've already seen what I did to my body. It's similar for each person. But to see them struggle, I think most of America actually loves that. To see someone who's quote unquote perfect body, let that go,
Yeah.
and see what it's like.
That's what I loved about your story when you did this whole thing was I was like, look, this guy could have just been happy-go-lucky, doing his thing, saying, look, if you eat the way I tell you to eat, you're going to look like me. I mean, you could have done all that typical stuff we see from the TV trainers and all that out there. Don't get me started on Jillian Michaels. Those kind of things that are put out there, and yet you put yourself at risk by what you did. And it worked and it succeeded, but you didn't know that in the midst of it.
No, I had no idea. I had no connections. That's the thing. I'm not some marketing genius. I just ran with the idea in hopes that
You got a great brand now. That's the marketing genius.
Well, thank you. But what I'm trying to say is that, I do feel lucky in a way to have all this happen. And my whole goal is to create a somewhat of a revolution with personal trainers, because there's so much judgment on both sides. There's these skinny, fit people over here who look at people who are overweight saying, oh, you guys are lazy. All you need to do is eat healthy and exercise. Why is it so hard for you? And I used to be over there. And people who are overweight are saying, look, you're so lucky, your genetics, this and that. There's a lot of misunderstanding and judgment on both sides. Yep. And if I can take this TV show, which is, just coming out on January 19th, and help bridge that gap a little bit, and show that there's understanding that needs to happen on both sides to get rid of the judgment, then I could sleep easy at night if I could bridge that gap a little bit.
That's so cool. So again, it's airing on January 19th, you said, is the debut. So go check out your local listings on A&E. Go ahead and set your DVR now. And I'm going to definitely watch it. That should be fun to watch. And those kind of shows are always kind of hit or miss for me. I stopped watching The Biggest Loser years ago. I think they've jumped the shark a long time ago. I've tried to pitch to them. They need to do a paleo or keto versus The Biggest Loser, and have the Biggest Loser people showing them on the treadmill and, and then have the paleo people outside playing and doing like, fogwa and all this kind of stuff for meals. Oh man, it'd be awesome.
Oh man, I'll pitch that to the production company. We'll see what they say. But you know what? With paleo and keto growing so fast and widespread, I don't see why not. Like, why not have it be out there in the mainstream?
Paleo TV show, yeah.
We'll see. Paleos versus vegans.
Well, I wouldn't go there because I think people can find what works for them. If somebody's happy doing a vegan diet, Drew, I'm going to be like, you know what? Go do your vegan diet and be happy with yourself. The unfortunate thing is a lot of vegans don't hold that same philosophy. They kind of say, well, it's veganism or the highway, and that's just truly unfortunate.
Yeah, and I see that a lot in the fitness industry, right? People are on board with these types of diets as if they're a religion, right? And they're so stuck in their ways, and they won't see anybody else's perspective, and they kind of demonize them. And I've seen it in the fitness industry. Friends of mine that have way more followers than me, will say something about or eating meat, and they'll get attacked, and vice versa. And it's sad to see that this is like becoming so serious for so many people. And so it's kind of unfortunate, especially with social media more prevalent. People feel like it's so much easier to attack somebody on social media. And I'm sure you've experienced that.
No, I never get attacked by anybody. I'm lovable, man. I'm just kidding.
Well, you are, man. People got to know you. I mean, you're a great guy, and I think people would learn so much if they just listened to your podcast and read your books and got to know you on a personal level.
You know what I do, Drew? Thank you, Drew. You know what I do? I just be me. I don't try to pretend to be some persona. I can tell people a mile away when they're trying to be a persona that's not authentically them. And I'm just the opposite. I'm like telling you the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between, because I think at the end of the day, that helps people a lot more.
Yeah. Well, I love that about you, Jimmy. So thank you so much for being honest and open and real. We definitely need more of that in the fitness industry. One last question from me, at least, about ketosis. What are the top 3 things or 5 things that people need to do in order to get started? Is it research meal plans? Is it, okay, go find out where these keto sticks are? What are the top 3 or 4 things to get started? Because for me, I'm not the example. I just kind of did it on a whim and just winged it. What are some things if they want to really do keto structurally, what are like the top 4 or 5 things that they can do to get started?
Yeah, you halfway did it and halfway did it. I'm just kidding. I'm going to get you to do a 60-day one before it's all said and done. But I think finding a plan, that's one reason I wrote Keto Clarity, because there weren't really any plans out there that kind of show you in layman's terms, this is what you do, and then this is how you measure how you're doing, and this is what you eat, and blah, blah, blah. There really wasn't anything like that. So pick up my book, Keto Clarity. I know that's a bit self-serving, but it definitely does lay it all out for you. And then when it comes to the diet, just get your carbs down first. I think that's always the first and foremost. That's one thing Dr. Atkins got dead on. He said start at 20 grams and then work your way back up according to your carbohydrate tolerance level. He got that dead on. What he missed was that there is a gluconeogenetic effect to protein. And what that long G word means is if you eat too much protein, you'll actually turn that protein into sugar in the body through the liver. So you want to make sure you moderate down on the protein and then eat the rest of your calories to satiety in the form of fat, mostly saturated fats and monounsaturated fats, not these vegetable oils that are highly inflammatory that will give you heart disease. You don't want those. Those are as bad for you as carbs, so stay away from them. And if you do those things, then you can move to testing for the ketones. We talked about this a little earlier. You want to measure for that beta-hydroxybutyrate in the blood. Ideally, that's the best thing that you can measure how you're doing. There is a third one we did not talk about called the breath ketone. It's acetone. And you can actually blow into this meter called a Ketonix, Ketonix. And you can actually order that online, ketonix.com. But you blow into it. It's a USB-powered device, and you blow into it, and it turns colors depending on your level of ketones coming out of your breath. And it's a pretty good yes-no. If that's all you need is yes-no. The urine ketones are not as reliable because once you become keto-adapted, after that 2 to 3 week period of adaptation, you'll start losing those ketones in your urine, and they'll get converted into the blood ketone, that beta-hydroxybutyrate. So you actually need to be testing in some measurable way that's going to give you good results, not just the pee stick. So blood ketones with that Precision Extra is the name of the monitor. If you're listening internationally, the name of the monitor is Freestyle Neo. And it's the same company that makes both of them. So if you find the strips for either Precision Extra or Freestyle Neo or Freestyle Optimum, all of those are the exact same meter, exact same company. They'll use the same strips in all of those. So test for that. And then just track your progress beyond weight. I'm so sick of people stepping on scales and saying, oh, no, I only lost 1 pound. I should have lost 12 million pounds by now. And I'm like, shut up. Please, just stop it. You're killing me here.
That's not what I deal with that every single day. If I could get rid of the scale, I would.
Sledgehammer. You need to do a video. Me and you need to do a video together where we've got these glass scales, and then we take a sledgehammer simultaneously and do it in slow motion. Would that not be awesome, man?
That would be awesome. And I can't remember the name of the movie, but that brings up the name of that movie. What's it called? Where they're bashing the printer, and they're beating it up in slow motion with sledgehammers and stuff. I can't remember the name of it. My mind is not working.
If you were in ketosis, you could remember that very easily.
And I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say
man.
that. I knew you were going to say that. And you know what? I'm actually going to, this in 2016, I'm committing to doing at least a 60-day keto diet, and I will have you back on to talk about my results.
Oh, dude, I would so love that.
I think that would be really cool.
Have, like, daily check-in, see how you're doing, see how you're tracking your progress. I would be honored to train you on that.
And you know what? And I would love that, because for me, it's not about weight loss. It's not about changing my body composition. Like, I'm already, I'm not trying to get any leaner or anything like that. Like, I would love to see from a non-weight loss perspective how this
that brain health.
Exactly. So I will be in touch with you off the air. We'll talk about this, and I think that would be a great idea for 2016.
Absolutely. Again, his name is Drew Manning. Check out his book. It's called Fit2Fat2Fit. We'll have a link to it in the show notes section on my podcast, thelivinglowcarbshow.com. He's also at Fit2Fat2Fit.com. That's the numbers 2 there, as well as his podcast is Fit2Fat2Fit.com/podcast. And you are doing a great job, Drew. I'm so happy you were back on my show and I got to be on your show.
I know, man.
How long has your podcast been on the air?
So this will be episode 19. So just
wow,
only a couple months. I'm still a baby, man. I'm nowhere close to where you are. But you know what? I actually love this.
50 something.
You were on before podcasting like became big. Like
this is true. I did get in on the cutting edge of podcasting.
So I have a lot to learn from you, Jimmy. But okay, tell my followers where they can find you.
Yeah, so I am at livinlavita.lowcarb.com. All of my podcast, blog, books, everything is there on that big splash page. Or if that's too much to remember, you can actually just type in my name, Jimmy Moore, into a Google search, and the whole first page and a half is all my stuff.
And I'll put all that in the show notes as well. And you are on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope. Okay.
At Living Low Carb Man on everything. Yep.
Love it. That will be in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Jimmy Moore, for setting up the simulcast. We will definitely have to do this again, and we'll talk more about ketosis.
Simulcasts are cool, man.
They are.
A little something different to do. I'm used to being the interviewer, but it's kind of cool being on both ends of the microphone in the same interview.
I actually agree with that. It's kind of takes some of the pressure off.
And podcasters always love interviewing other podcasters because you know the sound's going to be good. So
you don't have to tell them about the mic setup and all of that. So that's so true.
That's right.
Well, Happy New Year, Jimmy Moore.
Thank you, man. Happy New Year to you. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. I will be in touch.
Get that keto experiment going.
For sure. Have a good one.
All right, bud.
Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Let me know what you think of the way we did it today, the simulcast. Are you a fan of it? If so, let me know. If not, let me know too. I'm okay with honest feedback if you guys did not like this. If you did like it, please let me know, and we can do this in the future with other guests. So if you like today's episode, please subscribe on iTunes and let your family and friends know about this podcast. We definitely appreciate your guys' support. Now, sometimes we do have sponsors and sometimes we don't, which is why we have a donate button on our website. If you go to Fit2Fat2Fit.com/podcast, you'll see a donate button, which helps pay for production costs to keep this podcast alive. We would definitely appreciate that. You can sign up for my newsletter to stay in the know of what's going on with the TV show and upcoming appearances and speaking engagements. If you go to Fit2Fat2Fit.com, sign up for the newsletter to stay in the know. Also follow me on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is where I'm the most active. And I appreciate you guys so much, and I'll see you back here next week.